In today's episode, we go from an empty platform to a reimagining of a lost station.
Hi everyone, I'm Martin and welcome back to Donnington Castle Model Railway. Now, when I'm not able to get over to the garage, I tend to spend time sitting at my desk doing bits of painting and things like that. So over the past few months, I've been kind of bringing together some detailing for Speen Station. Now, part one of Speen Station, I did a few months back, and if you're interested, you can take a look at the video up there. We also did a bit of research visiting the site of where Speen Station originally was. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Speen was previously the closest station to Donnington Castle, hence why I thought it'd be a nice touch to have that on the layout here. Now, unfortunately, the closest station to Donnington Castle is Newbury, which is a little bit further away. In today's video, I'll show you the process of going from bare platforms to a detailed scene. To do that, I'm going to use a combination of small kits, some laser cut, small buildings, and then kind of various accessories and things from Ratio and West Hill Wagon Works and places like that. Hopefully we can bring all those together to make an interesting representation of Speen. Now, it's not going to be a fully accurate portrayal of the station because the kind of context of where the halt is on the heritage line here just doesn't match with the kind of reality of Speen Station. So we're going to be kind of taking elements of it, we're going to be mixing things around, and also we're going to be kind of dealing with the fact that Speen Station was really not the busiest, and therefore there really wasn't actually that much to see kind of on a day-to-day basis. And so we're kind of trying to make an imagining of kind of Speen Station with kind of passengers using it, but also kind of reflecting the fact that this is supposed to be a heritage line set in the 1970s. So we're going to have to kind of navigate that a little bit and just kind of come up with something that we think works. The kind of term we use at the modelling club is a pastiche. So we'll see how it goes. But anyway, let's start off by showing you the platform and what things look like now, and then we'll kind of go through the process of getting everything on there and hopefully ending up with a nice scene.
So in the episode on building Speen Station, you'll probably remember that we left it as effectively an empty platform. So what we want to do is to add some detail to that. Now, this is one of the best photos to see what we're going to be doing. And this is obviously on the Lambourn Valley Railway website. So as you can see on here, we have two buildings. We have a Great Western Railway pagoda, and we have a Lambourn Valley Railway style wooden hut over here. So they're the two things that we're going to be modelling. You'll also see the station sign and then some vegetation. Now, the vegetation is a little bit challenging, as I'll come on to in a second if we look at some other photos. Because you can see from this photo here that the station is effectively set in a kind of a very shallow cutting, meaning that the landscape actually kind of flows down onto the platform. Which means that all the kind of natural environment, therefore, can kind of creep onto the back of the station here. You might find that, and you can see we've got grass growing, and then here you can see this area of vegetation in here. Now, the challenge with our representation of Speen is that we have running lines behind it, therefore we can't really blend this into any landscape. And I think that just adding kind of vegetation on its own, as if it's kind of wild and overgrown, will look a bit odd. So what we're going to do is we're going to create almost like a little kind of a little border to have this kind of almost like semi-garden area in, and that's very similar to the way that there were kind of flowers and kind of small bushes and things growing on Lambourn Station. So that's kind of, I guess, the concession for that. This is probably the best picture of the Speen sign. We can see it's in the standard kind of Great Western format of the kind of black background and the white text. You'll notice the kind of the missing white bar on the bottom here. So that's something we'll need to be mindful of when we create that. And then, we can create these other two buildings. And I think that's then a good starting point. Obviously, we can think about some additional kind of decoration kind of items, people to add onto the station. But I think the sign, the vegetation, or kind of like a garden area, these two buildings and a bench are probably a good start. So let's get started. Here we have Speen Station, as we left on the previous video. And as you'll have seen from the photos, we're going to have a couple of buildings on here, one of which is going to be a Great Western style pagoda building. Now, where possible, I like to scratch build things using the laser cutter or 3D printing, but the pagoda building's got a roof that's really not easy to model, particularly for me. And so sometimes it's just easier to buy a kit, and there is a Will's kit of one of these buildings. So the SS35 pagoda building. So I picked one of those up, and just to make sure that that's going to fit, if we just kind of look, that's going to have just about the right kind of footprint on here. It's not going to leave much room on the edge of the platform, but that should be fine. So next job for me is going to be to get this built. There is one slight caveat to this. As you may have spotted in the photos, on Speen Station there were windows just either side of the door. So that's going to mean a little bit of kit bashing. So my first job is going to be to measure up how big I want those windows to be, probably from the back, use a very sharp knife and cut those out as neatly as I can, and then think about what the window frame is going to be and probably laser cut those. So that'll be the first task on this, but while I work on that piece, I'll probably get the rest of this painted up. So I'll do it in fairly standard colours of Great Western light and dark stone, which I have right here. So I'll probably go with the roof with the dark stone. These are precision paints. And then we've got light stone there for the walls. But before I do that, I will just check back on the photos. I don't know if there's any colour photos of Speen Station, so we might just have to use the black and whites to try and figure that out. Okay, right, that's the plan. I'll check back in with you soon. I have made some progress with these. As you can see, I managed to cut out some window slots, and I have, oh, that wasn't stuck down, and I have, there's a couple of spares here. I laser cut some windows. I basically measured up the holes I'd cut, which were within about 0.5 mil to 1 mil. So there is a slight difference in size, but hopefully you won't be able to tell that. So yeah, so laser cut some window frames to match the pictures I've seen, then just pop those in and glue them in. The photos I've seen show that this hut was in a whole different bunch of colour schemes over its lifetime. So I've decided for this to go for very traditional GWR colours, so I've gone with the light stone and dark stone. So the roof and the little kind of edging bits, dark stone, and the doors, dark stone. So next job is going to be to assemble this. I will stick the roof down. I'm thinking about putting some lights in here. So inside is all painted black, just to hopefully reduce any light bleed when I do get around to installing lighting. But let me glue all that together and then I'll come back. Oh, just one thing. If you see in the photo sometimes there was a poster board just to the side of this window. So what I would do is I will get that, probably a bit of 1 mil balsa. Oh, that's probably worth saying that these windows are cut from 1 mil balsa wood. So laser cut from that. So I'll do another 1 mil rectangle for that poster frame, and then see if I can find the actual poster that appears in the picture to go in it. Again, this isn't a faithful recreation of Speen Station, but the more little hints we can do to that kind of station, I think the better. So, right, on to assembly. I don't have a resin 3D printer, so I invested in some of these West Hill Wagon Works mailbags. I've just painted them in matte 94. They're still wet, so the colour's not how it'll go. That gives a kind of a nice base colour, kind of a mail sack colour. And then I will use some dark brown and possibly a little bit of black wash over the top of them just to give them a just to highlight some of the creases and some of the detail that's in them, but then also to make them look a bit used. Painted them on the supports. So what I'll do is when they're all dry and finished, I'll cut them off and then just touch up the bottom if any of it's needed. And then we can probably put a couple on our station. These are some figures I had on my layout when I was a kid. I think they're from Hornby, but I'm not sure. So what I've done is they all come with bright pink skin, so I've made them slightly more representative with a kind of variety of different skin tones there. So as you can see, they're so old that the kind of the bases have gone a kind of a weird color. So what I'll do is I will eventually cut the plastic bases off and then stick them down when I come to put them on the platform. Right, here is the progress that I've made. As you can see, I've painted up the Great Western Pagoda, popped a couple of travel posters on the front there from the GWR era. The idea being the volunteers have spent some time getting that done up. Although it's looking a little bit weathered. And then over here we have a custom-made laser-cut hut to match the Lambourn Valley style. It's kind of painted in BR era colours. On the roof there's some corrugation, so a sheet of corrugation. And then I've kind of just painted that and kind of weathered that down a little bit, following the technique from Dotside Scenics. On it, there are a couple of 1950s posters. I'm going to weather them down a little bit more and make them look like they've kind of been left there since then. And obviously the volunteers haven't got around to doing this hut up. On the real Speen Station, this would have been this way around. We don't have enough room for that here, so I'm going to flip that around. On the real station, we also had the kind of the banking coming down and there was soil and plants on here. That doesn't fit with the layout here, so I'm going to do what they did on Lambourn Station and add some little kind of flower bed edging to create a little flower bed area, fill that with soil and then pop some plants in there. And then our station sign is going to fit at the back there. That's been made using the same technique I used for the whistle boards, which is to use the fill mode on the laser cutter to engrave that out, paint the background black and the surround white. There's no white strip at the bottom because that's the way it appeared to be in the photographs that I've seen. So that's hopefully fairly realistic to the original. Those are some West Hill Wagon Works milk churns, which have just been painted in a kind of metallic colour. And then along the back, because we're going to have a running line behind there, I've got some second-hand ratio GWR station fencing. And then I'm just going to run that along the back edge of the platform, just so no one can fall off the back there. So I'll get that painted up. So yeah, that's the plan. And then some of the other details and the figures that you've already seen will be going on here. So I'll just do those next little bits and then come back to you and show you what we're looking like. There we have the fence attached and the sign. The sign's just stuck into the soil. I didn't actually drill any holes in the end. So it was my intention to make the fencing symmetrical, but it's ended up that it's not. So half of me thinks great, because that's probably more realistic. The other half of me can't really cope with the fact that it's not symmetrical. So only time will tell whether that lasts. But it's all stuck down with super glue, so I think it's going to have to be. Next step is I'm going to just add a little bit of weathering to the fence. I'm going to keep it fairly pristine in that the volunteers have just kind of painted this up, just to kind of really take the edge off the newness of the paint, I think. I'll then start adding some bushes and little kind of clumps of grass, just to indicate where there's kind of weeds and things that haven't been cleaned up. So what I'll do is I will get all that lot done and come back. And there we have our finished scene. Let me just talk you through a few bits and pieces. The benches, there's some Pico ones left over from my layout when I was a kid. I have created some GWR ones, some laser cut ones, so at some point I might come back and swap them out, but I think they look okay for now.
Some of the plants are scale model scenery. There's a few kind of woodland scenic bushes. There's a little bit of static grass. There's a little bit of coarse and fine turf, just to give the impression of some weeds and bits and pieces like that. Mentioned before, mail sacks and milk churns are both Westall Wagon Works. The little trolley and the trunk and the suitcase are from a little Pico kit. And then the figures, I think, are old Hornby ones, as I mentioned. But there we go. That's the scene done for now. I'm sure I'll come back and add to this in future, but I think that's a much better looking station than when we started. So let me just show you a few running shots of some trains stopping at the station. And there we go. I'm really happy with how that scene is coming together. If you do have any thoughts on things that I might be able to add to enhance the look, then please do let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to leave that for a few weeks as it is, just to kind of make sure I'm happy with where everything is, and then I'll kind of glue things down. But that'll make a nice addition now to the heritage line and kind of, I think, really add to the kind of scene when we've got trains running by. So thank you very much for watching today. If you're not a subscriber, then in a second there's going to be a subscribe button popping up. So please do consider that. There'll also be a couple of extra videos from the channel. So if you're interested in seeing more, then please do click on those. But otherwise, I will see you in a video soon. Bye-bye.